Hi, everybody.
All right. Welcome to our Equitable Housing Strategies Subcommittee meeting. I would like to call this meeting to order. The Equitable Housing Strategies Subcommittee meeting has now commenced. It is November 20th at 1 p.m. This meeting is being held virtually due to COVID-19 to allow for social distancing and to protect the public health. As we continue our efforts in meeting remotely, we ask all commissioners and guests to mute yourselves until called upon to speak to avoid feedback and background noise. For those who have dialed in using the call-in number, to unmute to speak, dial *6 on your phone. Also, prior to speaking, please announce who you are to identify yourself. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. We ask that you only use the chat function to request to speak or to announce that you are leaving the meeting so that we can track quorum. Also, to comply with the state open meeting law, attendance and votes will be done by way of roll call using audio, not by using the chat function. And with that, I would like to do the roll call. Alan Solat,
Yes, I'm here.
Lori Mazurbo,
Present.
Jay Young, I am here. That gets us to quorum. And then Kenny Wong, he is not present, and Robert Ojeda is also not present. So with that, we can move on to agenda item number 3, and that is City of Tucson Housing and Community Development updates. And I guess, Neto, you would be the person who might have some updates if there were any.
There are, and yeah, commissioners, you received a reminder, an email from Rachel today, but just a reminder that we're asking commissioners to vote on rescheduling the January meeting, which falls on New Year's Day. And please vote by Tuesday, November 25th. On Monday, 24th, HCD is holding a public meeting at the Dunbar Pavilion dining room on the proposed Stone and Speedway affordable housing development, part of the Choice Neighborhoods Implementation Housing Strategy. And we're holding another public meeting on Wednesday, December 3rd, to present again to the residents in Barrio Anita and in El Presidio on our proposed affordable housing development at Main and at Davis, 2 sites, 1 project. Got a lot going on here.
Indeed.
And some additional news. I think I'm allowed to let you know that Rachel is transferring to Department of Transportation and Mobility. Next week will be her last week. And Manisha Butra is moving from planning space administrator manager to chief of staff for newly elected Selena Barajas in Ward 5.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Good for them. I'm sorry to see them go, though. That's for sure.
I am very sorry to see
Rachel's
them
been very
go.
positive. She's really good, so
Yes, she is. So, I will try. But no, she is very efficient and so organized and just a lovely person, and we'll miss her. But she'll just be on the other side of the freeway.
Yeah, those organized people, it's like they're not the most common, and it's like you always like when you get one, you want to try and hang on to them.
Right?
So,
So that's our update.
all right.
Question, I think I voted on that doodle poll for the meetings rescheduling, but I don't want to vote again in case my vote would count twice, or should I worry about that? I
No,
can't say for sure I did it.
if you voted, then you're good.
Okay, should be all right.
Lori, have you voted? Putting you on the spot.
It did.
Yeah.
I think I was the first or second one to vote.
I might have been the second. I think I followed you. That sounds right now that you mentioned it.
All right.
Only the best commissioners on the
Well,
EHS subcommittee. I'm just saying.
My thing, if I say, well, I'll just do that when I can get to it, I'll never get
You'll
to
never
it.
do it,
You
right?
guys just got to do it. That's
Yeah.
that's how it works for me.
Me too.
All right. Thanks for the updates, Neto. Moving on. I know that we have done this several times now, but I just wanted to put this on the agenda. If there was any more feedback or edits or comments regarding the draft memo to mayor and council on addressing homelessness. I think at this point, there's just maybe a little bit of fine tuning with the editing, and then we're deciding kind of how to proceed in terms of meeting with ward offices potentially, and getting on the mayor's calendar to meet with her to discuss it as well. I think that's where we left off. So that's, the basics of where we are. Alan or Lori, do you guys have any further thoughts or comments about the memo? It's fine if not. I just wanted to put it on there in case.
My comment is I haven't really spent any time with it. I didn't know it was going to come up today. Maybe I should have known that. If I read through it, I probably would have changes just because that's how I am. Lawyers have to do that. You're not earning your money if you don't. But I'm sure it's fine. I mean, I know we've discussed, I remember the last meeting we had that was on our agenda, and I thought it was already done. So I'm surprised to know there's still opportunity to tinker with it.
Yeah, well, it just, since it's hasn't gone to mayor and council yet, it's like we can always kind of tinker a little bit. So Alan, if you get a chance and are feeling like it, take a look at it. If not, that's not a problem either. I don't know, Lori, if you've got anything since last we talked.
No, it looks very thorough to me.
Okay, great.
And I'm not a lawyer, so I'm a social worker. I'll go with it.
That's right. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm like,
We had a staff attorney who was very, very good at his job and liked to crank through cases and do his job properly, and he did. But when somebody raised an issue that wasn't really lawyer stuff, his answer was, "I'm not a social worker, I'm a lawyer."
that's funny.
Now we have someone who says, "I'm not a lawyer, I'm a social worker." I like
Yeah, works both ways, I guess, right? All right. Moving on, agenda item number 5 is discussion on tenants' right to counsel. Alan, this is you, and I think the idea here is just that you have brought up to the commission and to me and others about the need for tenants' right to counsel, and we decided to take it up here in this subcommittee, with the idea of, one, obviously getting more information from you, just about kind of what it is, how it works. And I think what I would like to see is, after you give us some more information and we discuss it, I would love for us to think about what we want to do as a subcommittee in terms of, do we want to vote to have this go to the full commission for review and possible vote? Do we want to, what exactly do we want to do with this issue in our subcommittee? So I'm totally open to that, but I think that's kind of where I see this going. So with that, Alan, I will turn it over to you to give us some more information and lead the way.
jet flyover. So yeah, I'm prepared to make kind of a little talk. I realize I'm talking to 2 people who have a vote, 3 people altogether. So I didn't know it was going to be such a small audience, but I'm happy to do this because it's not only really important, it's personal to me for reasons you might kind of derive as I go through this. I like to give a historical perspective. I don't know why, but I do. And so we didn't have any right to counsel in this country until a guy named Clarence Earl Gideon wrote a brief to the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court. He was a small-time crook in Panama City, Florida. He was incarcerated, and he did this, and it was an incredible bit of work, and it ended up having the court rule that there was a right to counsel in criminal cases. And not only did he do that successfully, and his name is forever linked to that, Henry Fonda played him in the movie. So it's really pretty astounding stuff. So is eviction is the same thing. It may be not as serious as liberty, but having your housing deprived of you is, to me, it's in the same ballpark as criminal. And some people refer to the right to counsel outside of criminal as civil Gideon, which I like that because it gives a historical perspective. But more commonly, it's known as RTC, or right to counsel. So eviction is a really serious problem. That's why we're talking about it today. Mayor and council talk about eviction prevention all the time. It is a serious problem. And I have a chart that I want to share right now So let me do that. If I can, do I have sharing privileges? Let me see if I do. I don't think I do. I don't know where.
No, give me a moment,
Oh,
Alan.
wait, I think I do. Yeah, it's
No,
just disabled.
I'm a little slow. Hang on.
That's all right. As long as it can be done, I'm happy.
Uh-huh. Okay, Alan, you got it.
Okay,
Go down to the bottom. The green arrow. There you go.
got it. So this is a chart. Let me get my notes back up. I'm gonna write that part out. So this is a chart that
Can you make
shows,
it larger?
I can.
Hmm.
Yeah, that seems to fill up most of the screen.
Hmm.
So, the negative health outcomes that come with eviction, and they're very dramatic. I'm not going to read this to you. You can read it yourselves or not as you please. But some of the ones that are striking to me is that there is long-term health impact for evictions. I wouldn't really think of that as being true. You see in the fourth column, it's conditions with children, a low birth weight, decreased life expectancy, kind of shocking, and academic decline. These are people that are not, haven't done anything. They weren't the ones that didn't pay the rent, and they're affected by this. Emotional trauma is one of the things on that list also, and trauma is directly connected to um, mental health issues and especially substance abuse. So in my observation, a thinking among the general public that homeless people have mental illness and abuse substances, and there's a connection in their mind between those things. There is a connection, but I don't think those things cause homelessness. I think homelessness causes mental illness and substance abuse. That's my opinion, and it's backed up by this chart. And you can see there is a source here. I have that report too, if anybody wants to look at the full report. Um, Decreased life expectancy, depression, suicide, all terrible things that happen to people are associated with eviction. So the idea of trying to stop evictions and prevent evictions is obviously very important and seems critical. I'm going to move past discussing this chart. I can leave it up if people want to look at it, or I can get rid of it if whatever anybody wants to do. I'll leave it up for.
Move on from it if you want.
Okay, moving on from it. There we go. Let me get my notes back up. So what is right to counsel? First of all, everybody who qualifies, and we'd have to define what it is to qualify, but it's going to be an income-based system, gets an attorney. And in Arizona, this is exactly what I tell my clients. If you don't pay your rent and the landlord does what they can do to properly follow procedures, you're going to get evicted because there's really not very many defenses to non-payment. There are defenses, which I'll get into in a second, but generally there's no defense. It is a serious thing that way. So we wouldn't do my notion of how this works is we wouldn't do merit screening. We wouldn't be looking at a case, say, well, this guy's got a defense, and so we'll represent him, or we don't represent you if you don't have a defense, which can be a lot of cases. That's not what this proposal is. So you get a defense whether or not you have a defense. One reason that I think is really important about is the general public has no understanding of this. And so they need to have someone tell them what is happening to them. It would be, and I don't know if this analogy is appropriate, but I'm going to make it, it'd be like you have some terrible illness and you don't have a doctor, so you're just left to speculate on what's happening. Or you go to the doctor and you're being told, yeah, this is something I can't deal with. It's incurable. You just have this. It's going to eventually kill you. So people need that kind of information, and so the right to counsel would supply that information. As an example, just to describe how this works in practice, we get clients who have already had an eviction judgment. They've gone to court. They were there. They wanted to defend their case. It didn't work because the whole process is completely opaque. They don't know what's happening to them. Tenants are not able to pay their rent when they want to if they're in eviction posture, unless they can pay everything. They have to pay everything or nothing. So now the judge says to him, as he's entering a judgment for eviction, oh, you can pay your landlord now. Your landlord can accept money from you. And the judge will say other words which probably go over their head. And at some point he says something about 45 days. Now, what that 45 days is, the landlord has 45 days to serve the writ of restitution, the court order that says they have to leave. So people walk out from court thinking, oh, my landlord can take my money and I've got 45 days to pay them. And that's absolutely not true. They have 5 days before the writ of restitution can be issued, and the landlord can take their money and apply it to what's owed and still evict them. So they really have no idea what's happening to them. And I'm not describing something that's unusual or rare. This is what I see all the time. So and there are some defenses that I'm going to mention here now. And Jay, you know this, fair housing is a defense, and it's a tool that we use, especially, it's really common that people have, if you ask them, why didn't you pay your rent? And, I've never had anybody say, well, I went to the casino and lost. I mean, it must happen, but that's not common. What is common is, well, I broke my leg and I couldn't work. I had knee surgery, I couldn't work. My kids got COVID, I couldn't work. And these are all disability issues, and with the right kind of posturing, you can get maybe a reasonable accommodation request out of the landlord, or have a right to sue them for violating their fair housing rights. So there are those things, and Arizona law has similar defenses, with their own fair housing statutes. This is a little bit out of order in my talk because I just took some notes earlier today and didn't put it in order. But emphasizing how important it is to have lawyers. I've got a couple examples of that. So it was shared with me today by Drew Schaefer with Morris Institute for Justice that he and Andy Flagg from EELS shared a panel in Tempe within the last 2-3 weeks. And Andy Flagg, according to what Drew told me, says that when there's an attorney, he thinks roughly half of the cases have a fully positive result. That's Andy Flagg's statement. And without an attorney, it's like a 1% have a positive outcome. Theoretically, 50 times better outcome. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous to put in those terms, but it is that dramatic. I've got an example. I thought I had my notes here, but I'm just going to say it now while we're on this topic. This is an actual war story, which I don't like sharing war stories necessarily, but it very much demonstrates how different it is having a lawyer. So my client was sued for eviction, and a federal law, if the apartment building has a federal mortgage, this one was Fannie Mae, the CARES Act requires a 30-day notice. And Pima County, we follow that, and the judge enforces it. If you don't have a 30-day notice, you can't do an eviction if it's a federally backed mortgage. This client had a federally backed mortgage. It was Fannie Mae. I raised that issue. The lawyers agreed, and the case was going to be dismissed. On looking at the client's history, there were 6 prior eviction cases. Same landlord, same tenant. She was somehow able to correct all those, but each of those had an eviction judgment. Each of those had the wrong notice, 5 days, not 30. Some of them had satisfaction of judgment, so she was able to get rental assistance or some way to cure the problem. I asked the landlord, basically threatening sanctions because of the way they had handled these things, to vacate all those judgments, and they did. So 7 cases, 1 of them had a lawyer, dismissed, 6 other ones prior, no, they're all eviction judgments. I consider that to be a very dramatic impact. I'm skipping around in my notes. I had another thing I wanted to get to here. I shared with everybody hang on. Okay, skip past this. Here we go. I shared with everybody the Stout study. Stout is a think tank. I don't know what it is actually. They've done these studies all over the country, and this one was commissioned by the city of Phoenix. It's dated May of this year, so it's a very current thing. And um, so there's really good information in there. I'm going to come back to that. What I wanted to say is I also looked up to find data on our local data, on number of cases filed and how many have lawyers. And luck would have it, I found that data. There's a government entity called Legal Services Corporation. They're a funding source for my law firm, LSC. Every year, they're a line item in the federal budget. They grant money to 130 legal services law firms across the entire country. There's 3 in Arizona that get that. We're one of them. And they have data. I can share. I'll put the link in the chat that I have, where this data I'm getting from right now. So from what I gathered from that data, which I rely on to be completely accurate, in 2024, there were 11,515 eviction cases filed in Pima County. Of those, 92% had lawyers, just about 10,000. Of the ones that had tenants, lawyers, it was 1.7%, about 200 cases. So having a tenant's right to counsel will level the playing field.
Can you repeat those stats?
Yes. So Pima County, 2024, there were 11,515 cases filed. And Lori, the link I sent in the chat is where I'm getting this.
Okay.
And 92% of those had those cases, landlords had lawyers. And I'm just rounding that to 10,000 cases of the ones filed, just for illustrative purposes. And then of those 10,000 cases, 1.7% had tenants lawyers, or about 200 cases.
Alan, I was going to ask you, I imagine you don't have exact numbers, but I was just wondering, so obviously most landlords that are going to eviction court to get people evicted have attorneys, but there's a significant number of landlords that go to court that don't have attorneys. Of the landlords that go to court to try and evict a tenant, of the ones that do not have an attorney, do you know what their success rate is? Are landlords, even without an attorney, gonna generally be more successful than the tenants without an attorney?
My experience, just to give you my background, which you may know, Joe, but Ernesto and Lori may not. I've been doing this work in housing eviction defense since July of 22. So my experience is recent and also very limited. And in Pima County, if the case doesn't originate in Green Valley or Ajo, every case is heard by Judge Newman, except when he's on vacation or out ill. And so my experience is Judge Newman. And Judge Newman evicts people all the time. Here's a bad example of exactly what you're talking about. Maybe you know the name Brian Bowers and his wife Margot, who own 3 or 4 local apartment buildings, one of which is the Spanish Trail in South Tucson. They're very experienced at doing this, very experienced. There's some of these kind of local landlords that have, the Lecoqs is another one, Carolyn and Al Lecoq. They have good experience, they know how to do this. And so they just because they do it all the time, they know what they're doing with it. Tenants don't do it all the time. And maybe they have repeat cases, but it's not the same thing. And it's business for these people, so they study it, they take time. If you're defending your own case, it's a mess. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but there are and of course, and this came up in today's meeting. We have a practice group meeting in our office, and we were talking about landlords. And I used your example. I talked about you, Jay. Jay's a local landlord, and because one of our lawyers saying he hates all landlords and they're all pricks and whatever. And said, well, yeah, but and maybe they're not. And so we're seeing the bad ones. We don't see the ones that the landlords that are cooperating and doing what they can to make the situation work. We see them where, the rent's due on the 1st and late on the 6th, and we see them giving an eviction notice on the 7th and filing an eviction action on the 12th. We see that.
Yeah, and I mean, I certainly appreciate that, Alan, because I do think when, for the most part, when we're talking about landlords in this context, I mean, I know that there are plenty of mom and pop landlords that, don't do a good job and whatnot, but I feel like a lot of the problem is with companies that own lots of
That's right.
units, because obviously when that's your business and you run a company like that, you're going to be doing whatever the most efficient thing is for your business and then some potentially. And so, I think that that's where a lot of the problems are, because I wonder, how many small landlords are even going to eviction court, because, lots of small landlords, it's going to be a struggle to hire an attorney if you're a small landlord as well, maybe easier than if you're a tenant, but
They can afford it, and there are people that take those kind of cases. We see them all the time.
right.
But yeah, I think most people aren't suing for eviction and aren't doing these things. But even worse when it's a large corporate landlord, which is a national company. There's several of those that own property in Tucson and do evictions. The property manager, the one in charge of the property in Tucson, um, has limited, if any, discretion what they're doing.
Right.
They have a policy and they follow the policy,
Right.
which is really difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
Okay, so I skipped around a little bit and I'm sorry for that, but I think we're making progress anyway. So happy to answer questions. So I appreciate you jumping in and asking questions, Jay. I included in materials I sent out yesterday a link to this outfit, the National Right to Counsel outfit, and they keep track of these things. And according to them, there's 26 jurisdictions in our country that have right to counsel. Sometimes it's cities, sometimes it's counties, mostly it's cities, and I think there's a few states. So this would not be, I mean, ideally we'd get to the state legislature and have them provide this, but the current political makeup of the Arizona legislature wouldn't permit that. But I think we have the right people in our legislative body in Tucson to do this if they think it's right. And another point, why right to counsel is important. We get opportunity to educate the judge and landlords attorneys on what the law is. And I'm going to give you an example of how that worked. The CARES Act. This is in part, me saying this demonstrates the concept I'm saying, which is there's broader impact than just one client. But also it's going to make me sound like I'm a hero because of what I did. And it works like this. In 2023 and before, when the CARES Act was in place, the law wasn't being followed properly. And if they thought CARES Act applied, what the system let you do, and this was Judge Newman, after the 5-day eviction notice, you could start your eviction case. You just couldn't serve the eviction order, the writ of restitution, until after the 30 days. That's not what the CARES Act provides. And so we took one of those cases and appealed it. It was my case, and we got a ruling out of Judge Yealing in Superior Court that said, no, Judge Newman, you're doing it wrong. They can't start the eviction case until after the 30 days because they have 30 days to move or cure the problem. If they don't, then you have a right to start the eviction case. So, and that ruling from Judge Yealing came out in January of 24. So now it's been almost 2 years. I had Keith Bentley, which I know you know, Jay, and maybe Lori knows who that is. He's a sociology professor in the U of A, and he's deeply interested in homelessness issues and provides all kinds of studies. Showed, I can share it with you if I could find it, could find it easily. A chart showing the decline in eviction filings in, I think it was April and May of 2024. And every year there's a decline, but this was a way more dramatic decline. And he agreed with me that was because of the CARES Act ruling. So there were, I don't know, hundreds of cases that weren't filed because of the CARES Act ruling. And I got a case yesterday, and there's a 30-day CARES Act notice in that case. So the landlord's following the law and giving the correct notice. That's because of what we did. So that impact is ongoing. And that's just one example of it. So having a right to counsel gives that one tenant the right, but also educates the judge or maybe makes a change in the law, like what we were able to accomplish. So I think that's a really important part of right to counsel, which isn't immediately obvious. Question that hasn't been asked, but I'm going to answer now is, what do we think this might cost? And it's not cheap, but the benefit is so dramatic that it seems obviously worth it. Obviously, I would think that. So in order to answer that question, which I don't really know the answer to, I took that Stout study that I referred to earlier and used the data from there. It's Phoenix data, not Tucson, not Pima County, but still I think it illustrates it, and I think it's accurate. I think what I'm coming up with is one way to look at it. So the Stout study estimated there's like 40,000 eviction cases in a year in Maricopa County, but of those, according to the way that they were looking at the data, 16,000 of those tenants of the 40,000 cases would be eligible for right to counsel under the way they were doing it, and they think that's going to cost $25 million a year. So this is big money. That's Maricopa County and Phoenix. So using those Stout analysis and the numbers that I got from the LSC website, I'm figuring out about 4,400 cases in Pima County, based on those 2024 numbers. And using the Phoenix cost, I come out to about $1,550 per case per year, and that's roughly $6.8 million for Pima County, which is a lot of dough. But the benefit of it, as we've been discussing, is really dramatic. I want to comment here that that's Pima County. It's not City of Tucson. The Justice Court is a county court. I'm completely ignorant on how to do this with Pima County and Tucson being two different governmental entities that would have to be involved in this. We already have the EELS program, Emergency Eviction Legal Services, which is a grant funder for my law firm. And I don't know how much money they have, but maybe some of that 6.8 million is already being spent on EELS, and it could be used to do this, or maybe expand EELS or do something. So that makes sense to me. So that's and right now, as I said, EELS is a grant funder from us. So if we appear in an eviction case, a filed eviction case, and we appear in it, it's referred to us by EELS, they pay us a flat fee of $1,500. So that's one reason I'm pretty comfortable thinking this is what it would cost, because that's what EELS is paying us. And EELS kind of already is in a weird way a right to counsel program. So we already kind of have that. And it didn't occur to me until I was talking to Drew Schaefer today that I should get Andy Flagg or somebody there to give me their data so we can look at it. They have 4 years worth of data doing this now. I think and he has data, he has information. I think it'll be useful. We also could do a pilot project. I'm not as eager about that, but if the county or the city wants to start low and start to see how this works, we could do that. It would mean 1 lawyer, 2 lawyers, a couple hundred cases. We could collect data. We could show how it helps. And it's not the end of the world to do it that way. It just isn't. It isn't the same thing. So the last thing I want to talk about, I think is the last thing, more or less. Again, basing my information on the Stout study, it's really common in our world that somebody says, well, you spend $1, here's the return on the dollar you spent. And the pushback, of course, is we don't want to spend that dollar. And we don't care what you say about what's going to be saved. So I don't have a way of responding to that. But here it's a $2.58 benefit for every dollar spent on right to counsel, according to Stout. And that's a conservative number. It's probably more. What is that benefit? I don't know how they measured that. And their study probably says I didn't really try to focus on that. Fewer evictions would be one thing they show in that study is that of the municipalities that have this, every year that they have it, there's fewer evictions. They estimate maybe it goes down 2% a year. One municipality might have been Cleveland, and they think it's gone down 25% overall. So there's going to be fewer evictions. And as I said earlier, that avoids the negative health issues and the disruption of families. It means that the less Medicare reimbursements are going to be needed. Evictions a leading cause of homelessness. I don't know what the cost of that is, but it's dramatic. It's more than $6.8 million a year for this Pima County, I would have to assume. Money people seem to want to rather spend on putting people in jail than, keeping them housed. But nevertheless, that's it. Again, mayor and council have said in meetings that I've watched, eviction prevention is something they're seeking. This is eviction prevention. It saves money by preventing eviction and homelessness. There'll probably be reduced need for police and emergency services because there'd be fewer people homeless and fewer kind of street crimes and things like that. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at with this. Hopefully that was helpful. You can see I'm interested in it. Something I want.
I was gonna say, just as you finished up talking, Alan, that that's, I worked in the housing sector for 20 years before going to Yodo, which is more education focused, still homelessness. But we were always trying to figure out the dollar amount that we could save if we just stop things like homelessness from happening. And we're going to spend the money either way. We're going to spend it,
Right.
in court with a lawyer, or we're going to spend it on emergency services, on prevention dollars if someone can get, in a program that will give them prevention dollars to prevent them from being evicted, or they're going to end up in the homeless system, which is really expensive, or the hospital, because of some sort of
Or prison.
Yeah, or prison. And all of those things are extremely expensive. So it's just always driven me completely crazy that we're going to spend the money either way. And what would be the better way to do that for society, and for the person? Like, stopping all of this stuff from happening would be much more cost effective.
Yes, you summarized my point. That's correct.
Well, and then on top of that, we save the system money, but, just in terms of the stability of people and families, I mean, we just know how costly evictions are for people that go through eviction, right? So, if we're wanting people to become stable and, raise children that go to the same school and, build routines in their lives, keeping them housed is just so important. And, when people get evicted, we drain money from them that, I think people never end up catching up from. So, not only do we save the system money, but we also keep money in people's pockets that need it the most. So I think it works both ways in that sense.
And to your point about schools, when I worked at Our Family, we had a grant to prevent evictions because school outcomes for school age children go down immensely. I don't remember the percentage, but when their parents have to move so much because they're getting evicted or they have to go into a shelter, their school age children's school outcomes go down immensely. So there's all kinds of things that are not even, dollar costs. And then you have trauma, there's trauma that people then carry as well if they get evicted and end up homeless, or, all of those things. It just seems so common sense to me.
Yeah.
It does.
Well, and I think the other thing that the places that have put these programs in place, one thing that it just dramatically exposes, in my opinion, is how landlords are abusing the system. Because if all you need to do is give a tenant an attorney in eviction court and their success rate goes from 1% to 50%, clearly people are not getting evicted, or people are being victimized by the system because of their lack of understanding or inability to navigate, or not understanding the law. It's lots of people apparently seem to be getting evicted that otherwise shouldn't be getting evicted if all things were equal. So I think that, and then Alan, what you said about, I don't remember where it was, but that the city that put it in place that has shown that evictions go down 2% a
I
year
think
or
it'll go down
whatever.
every place it's done, but what I remember is, and I didn't write this down, so I'm not positive, but Cleveland went
But
down 25% over some time period, not like in 1 year.
well, and I think that illustrates that same point, right? It's like landlords think twice about going to court and evicting people if they know that they're going to have to face a tenant's attorney and actually make their case to another attorney who's going to be able to poke holes in it, or whatever. So to me, it just shows an
Right.
abuse of the system at the sacrifice of normal
Without
folks.
using the word abuse, I can describe to you my theory on how landlord lawyers do this. It is just a theory. I've never been in a landlord law firm. I don't know. But it's a volume practice for them. And, I look at the calendar, and when I have the calendar, I look to see there's 3 or 4 landlord law firms that do this on a regular basis. And I look to see, like, I'm with this one law firm today and how many other cases they have in the calendar. And sometimes like 16 or 17 or 20. So it's a volume practice. Each it's required by the law for each lawyer who files an eviction complaint to verify the complaint and state in writing, I've reviewed this and I've done some due diligence and I verify everything in here is true. Are they doing that on 20 cases on one day? My theory is they're not. What they're doing, and of course that's an ethical violation if they're not, because they're saying in writing they have. I think what the practice is, they have a relationship with the property manager. The property manager has a relationship with the legal assistant in the law firm, and they're all trained to know what the documents are they want. And they send them the documents and they knock out a complaint and summons, and on one law firm, they just stamp the lawyer's name on it and file it.
Yep, for sure.
It's a terrible practice,
Um,
if that's what's happening.
For sure. And again, it just goes to show that it's abusive, and, people are being wrongfully evicted, essentially, in my opinion. I think a couple of other things that I would like to highlight from my experience running Southwest Fair Housing Council. We get hundreds of calls every year. And the one thing that is clear over and over and over again is, one, people don't understand their rights. They just don't. The information's out there, but either they don't get it, or they get it and they don't understand it, or whatever. It doesn't really matter. People don't understand their rights. And even if the info is available, people just don't get it. So it's too high a bar to expect people to, quote, know their rights and deal with it on their own. It just in our experience, that's just not the reality. It's not like, oh, if we only provided people more information, or some of these other things around the edges, all of this would get better. I don't think that's the case. And I think really, making sure that people have legal representation is the way to prevent this. And then, there's always going to be the question about money. And I get that. And I think that the way that I look at this is, we know that what we're going to hear if we recommend this is that there's no money. I mean, we just know that. That's what we hear. I don't think that that's relevant to what we're doing at this point in the process, because if it's important, eventually money will be found. And if we don't put this on the radar, it's never going to go anywhere. So we've got to put it on the radar, and expect. My expectation is that, it's not going to happen this year. It's not going to happen next year. But if we keep it on the radar and we keep the pressure up, eventually, like you said, Alan, a pilot program comes about, and then the success is shown, and then more money is found, and that kind of thing. So I really don't want to get hung up on how is this going to be funded. I just don't think that that's our position really as a commission. I think what
I like that approach.
we are proposing things that we think would be effective to make housing more just and equitable. And it's not, we would never be able to figure out how to fund this. It's not
Yeah,
realistic. So
I'm clueless on how to do that. I have no
yeah,
idea. I was able to, because I knew it was an issue, kind of give some numbers that I think are supportable, but they may be wrong. I have no idea.
yeah. So with that, I don't, Lori, do you have any more questions or comments? Okay. I guess my question at this point is, based on this presentation and based on our discussion, I'll just say what I would like to do is I would like to do something along the lines of, as a subcommittee, make a recommendation to the full commission to put this on the agenda for discussion, with the idea that we think that this should be a recommendation to mayor and council. And I think, obviously this would be separate than the memo that we're, is basically finished regarding homelessness. I think this should just be a standalone issue that we, again, recommend to the full commission to put on the agenda, because we think it should go, we should make it a recommendation from the full commission to mayor and council. That's what I would like to see. I don't know how that lines up with what your thoughts are, Lori, or what your thoughts are, Alan, about what we do today as a subcommittee for the future commission meetings.
My goal for today was to get the subcommittee to agree to do exactly what you just said.
Yeah, I am in support of that. I like the idea of us talking about something that could happen. I mean, I get it, the money piece, but it could happen a lot sooner than like all the housing we're building, right? Like I know there's all those pieces and parts that have to go together to make the system functional. But sometimes in the commission meetings, I feel like we're talking about stuff that's like 2, 3, 5 years out. And this is something, if there was political will behind it, or, money or whatever, that could happen, and could happen pretty quickly, and would make a big difference. So I'm really excited about presenting this to the commission.
It's a really good point. Yeah, I mean, to go even further, Lori, I mean, I would say some of the affordable housing stuff we're talking about, I mean, the results won't be seen for 20 years, I mean, it's even farther out. So that's a really great point. I appreciate that.
Yeah, the need is present for both those things. And if we can afford it, we should do both of them right away. And all we can do is what we can do.
Right. Would somebody like to make a motion along the lines of what we just discussed that we want to do?
I'm happy to make that motion. And is it that the Equitable Housing Subcommittee would like to present Alan's information on evictions and having lawyers present versus lawyers not present?
Yeah, I think that sounds right. And what I would add to that is basically that our subcommittee is recommending that it be on a upcoming agenda for the full commission, and that we also, I think it's worth saying that we think that this should be a recommendation to mayor and council. So just a little bit of addition there.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, and I am too, obviously. Let me.
Is that a second from you, Alan?
Yes, it is. But before you put this to a vote, I just want to make a point that the lawyers that would be doing this possibly could be lawyers at Solid. And so this could directly benefit my law firm and me. And so if I need to abstain from voting on this, maybe I do. But if I'm abstaining, does that mean there's no quorum?
I wouldn't think so. I would think there's still
no.
quorum. You're just abstaining, and it would.
And that would be the reason for my abstention, is because I have a
I also
theoretical personal stake in it.
I would argue differently, Alan. I would say that it's not a conflict of interest. I would say just because you work for Sala, it doesn't mean that you can't vote or be part of this decision just because you work for Sala. I mean, nobody's saying that this should be through Sala, and
Right.
I would even argue that the idea that you would benefit personally from it is a stretch. So that's just my thing.
And you're only making a recommendation, but I'm not a
Okay.
lawyer.
But
That's right.
these aren't things I have a really good intimate knowledge of either. Jim Toffel raised the issue with me, and I immediately agreed, yeah, I probably shouldn't vote for it, but
I
Yeah.
didn't, I would not have given that same advice. I just am like, the idea that there's a conflict of interest among us that are working for some nonprofit agency. I'm just like, it doesn't seem like a conflict. It's not like you're a developer and we're talking about something and you're going to benefit by making $5 million off the
no,
deal. I mean, it's just
no.
not even in the same ballpark.
It
So
won't affect my paycheck other than not having a paycheck if we lose our funding.
yeah, right.
Let me clarify a couple of things before we move further. One, Alan, I think you need to make a more formal, if you're going to, a more formal, I second Lori's motion.
Okay.
And two, uh, Jay, you mentioned you bring this to the full commission. If you could stipulate what month, I would suggest not December because we're butting up against the December agenda, and I know it's pretty full.
Before we go on, I made a mistake and drank some tea before this meeting. I have to go use the men's room, so I'm gonna excuse myself, but it won't take me very long.
Sure.
Is that a second?
That's the second. I do second the motion if you, but I'll be right back.
Okay. Um, I'll just wait until Alan gets
Mhm.
back. I was just thinking about what you said, Neto, of like, I think the motion that Lori is putting forward and that I am making a friendly amendment to is basically that the Equitable Housing Subcommittee is recommending that the full Commission for Equitable Housing and Development um, agendize the discussion about a tenant's right to counsel for the January commission meeting,
Mhm.
and that additionally, we recommend that the full commission recommend this as to mayor and council as something that should be done by the city of Tucson.
Mhm. Got it.
So I think that, Lori, correct me if I'm wrong, if I missed any of what your motion was, and then my clarification to that.
No, I think that was it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And again, back to that's Jay's doubt. Again, I think it's pretty clear he's able to make a second on a motion just going to a full commission for discussion.
Yeah,
You're not even voting on appropriating money.
right.
We're far from that. Let's just move this to discussion. I don't see this as a conflict, and I see a lot of conflict of interest.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think a lot of us are overly cautious about conflict of interest,
Yeah,
quite honestly, but
yeah.
so.
Well, except some people who shall go
There's some that
nameless.
aren't. I guess another way of putting it, my concern is I don't want my potential conflict of interest, even though we all can agree there isn't one,
Hmm.
to make it so tenants' right to counsel doesn't become Tucson's law.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't
Hmm.
think that's an issue.
No.
Um, so Alan, while you were gone, I made an attempt to clarify Lori's motion and my amendment to it, and just to see if I can repeat it again. What we are doing, the Equitable Housing Strategy Subcommittee is recommending that the full Commission for Equitable Housing and Development agendize a discussion about tenants' right to counsel for the January meeting. And additionally, we recommend that the full commission recommend this as something that we would like for the city of Tucson to put into place. Does that sound like?
Second that motion.
Great. Any further discussion about the motion before us? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The motion carries. All right. Thank you so much, Alan, for the presentation and bringing that to the commission. we will work to get that on the agenda for the January meeting.
I can make the same presentation, maybe modified a little bit when we do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that'd be great.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item number 6 is our work plan for 2025 and 2026. Obviously, 2025 is coming to a close. I know, Alan, you and I talked about getting the tenants' right to counsel conversation before this subcommittee, and we have now done that. So I just want to put out there for the group kind of what do we want to focus on as a subcommittee in 2026. And if we don't have answers today, that's fine, but we do need to think of some things. Obviously, our work on homelessness in 2025 is also, for all intents and purposes, I think we're done with that as a subcommittee. So, excuse me, do y'all have any ideas or any topics or issues, any presenters, anything at all that you think that we should undertake as a subcommittee going forward?
I confess nothing jumps immediately to mind. I mean, the two topics we're talking about, homelessness and eviction prevention, are really significant. Affordable housing is part of that. And so that would maybe be a topic, but we already kind of have dealt with that. I think some of that's in the report that we're giving the city.
Yeah, and I think just to add a little framing to, what we do, obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but, Alan, when the subcommittee was first convened, it was focusing on addressing housing segregation within the city of Tucson. I'm sure, as you know, we're still quite segregated by race and ethnicity. And then we expanded the scope to just deal with equitable strategies for housing.
I did not know that. It's interesting.
More broadly. So that's kind of the spirit that under which we started this subcommittee. So, I think going forward, just thinking about, what are some other equity issues related to housing, whether it's housing segregation or, other issues that are, impacting people in the city of Tucson, is kind of what we're trying to focus on. So yeah, I'm having trouble at this point. I mean, one of the things, obviously there's the mobile home working group that Ray is dealing with. Obviously, I think there are a lot of equities issues around mobile homes, mobile home parks. But she's got a pretty good handle on that, but that doesn't mean we couldn't support or take that up. The other thing I think that still really resonates in my mind was a presentation that we got from Bill Mackey from the U of A. I think it was in early this year, just about how zoning really negatively impacts the ability to build housing in the city of Tucson. And, there has been some zoning reform around the edges that I think, with the community corridors tool and some other things. And, the Planning Commission just took up the middle housing issue. And, we have to, the city has to make changes in order to comply with state law. And I think the middle housing law that the city is working on, is another step in the right direction. But I do still think that zoning is a really, really big problem in terms of, I think it creates inequities. And I think that, just generally it inhibits housing construction, which would, help with supply issues. And, this is just an aside, but it's interesting. In the middle housing discussion, I heard a few people in the audience say, allowing more units to be built on lots that currently don't allow, more units. There's no requirement that it be affordable housing, but totally missing the picture that by building more housing and creating more supply, it reduces the cost of housing overall, making housing affordable, more affordable overall. So that was just an interesting aside. You don't necessarily need to make all new housing be, technically affordable housing to, create more supply and at least moderate costs, the cost of housing. So anyway, I don't know, Lori, do you have any thoughts about topics to pursue going forward? Again, we don't need to answer this question now, but if you do have anything.
I don't think so. I just think that our work got much harder with what's happening with all the funding for homeless programs, and I think it'll be really important that we as a commission take our work very seriously in the coming year, because our community is facing a big loss of funding, which is going to create more people who are experiencing homelessness, and that's just what no one needs right now.
Right.
One comment I would have, Jay, it's kind of a crossover between this committee and the commission and the Living Streets Alliance thing that you and I are somewhat involved in. But having something done about the fact that you can build an enormous apartment project and not have transportation alternatives besides motor vehicles be part of that. And I'm not able to say what I would do about that. Can I make somebody not build a building if they don't have transit available? I don't know. But it shocks my conscience that people have to have a car to live certain places. And that seems very obviously inequitable. And that's my thought.
No, I appreciate that, Alan. And, I think I think of, transportation and housing as being, critically linked, like you were just describing. And I think what it maybe raises for us to think about as a subcommittee going forward is how housing is so closely linked to these other areas, whether it be public health, like you outlined in your presentation, right? You get evicted and it really can affect the health of the people living in that housing that are getting evicted, whether it be transportation, all of the access to opportunity, all of those things. I don't know that we've explored those too deeply, but I mean, one of the things that we really tried to do that just has never gotten any traction is, pushing the city to better measure equity. I know that there are a lot of cities now that, have some sort of way that they are, year to year measuring, how much more equitable their city is becoming, whether it's with housing or other, transportation or, all the things that go together to, create opportunity for people. So, that's another thing that we could pick back up, but I don't know, it just has been hard to figure out exactly, how to get that to the full commission and then get any traction to measure equity, because I just think it's hard to know if you're making improvements if you're not measuring. But I kind of dropped that fight just because I couldn't figure out how it could get any traction. So anyway, I'm happy to keep this conversation going. We can also move on if people like, and just keep that thought going, for our future meetings, because we will need to think about some things to talk about and some things to put on our agenda. So I don't know, you guys, are you all ready to move on, or any more comments about 2026?
I have no further comments.
All righty. With that, I will move on to agenda item number 7, which is the call to the audience. Do we have an audience today, Neto?
Just me. And I have a lot to say, but we'll save it for a beer later.
That sounds like a good plan. All right, moving on, number 8. Next steps. The next Equitable Housing Strategies Subcommittee meeting is December 16th at 1 p.m. The next full commission meeting is December 4th at 4 p.m. Let's see. And then I think reviewing the main points for the full commission, obviously we passed a motion to discuss and hopefully recommend tenants' right to counsel. We also had a preliminary discussion about what we want to deal with and address as a subcommittee in 2026. Just got that started. Got a couple of ideas out there, but I think we're still thinking. What else? Is there anything else, y'all, that we talked about that needs to go back to the full commission?
I think you covered it. So are we talking about having the tenants' right to counsel be on the agenda for the December 4th meeting?
No, January.
I thought you said before January, right? Okay.
And that's it. Anything else for next steps, y'all? Because our next agenda item is adjournment.
Adjournment sounds good to me.
Thank you, Alan. That was very informative. I enjoyed it.
My pleasure, Lori. And you have questions, you want to email me or phone me directly, totally fine.
And I realize as I just said it, it's weird to say I enjoy hearing terrible things, but you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean. I enjoyed preparing for it and I enjoyed making the presentation. So I'm glad that it was a receptive audience. I'm glad we didn't have anybody saying you're an idiot. So that was
all right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend. Happy Thanksgiving. And we are adjourned.
Thank you
Thank
so much.
you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye.